Back to Road Gang Radio with Jimmy Mack, Lindsay Lawler.
Give me a minute, y'all. I'm coming.
And you, because if you're listening, you're in the gang. Take it away, founding member Phone Master Dre.
She said it, and she's right. Lindsay will be here in a half hour, but let's talk to another lovely lady that we have in our lives. Shouldn't we, Jimmy?
Well, yeah, absolutely. We're always enjoying talking to founding members of the reconstituted Road Gang. Mm-hmm. The sponsor, by the way, of both Education Station and this segment, The Future Was Yesterday, is in fact our friends over at CarriersEdge.
Love them.
The CEO of that particular company arrives on the scene. I want you guys to go to CarriersEdge.com and find out about all the things that Jane Jazrawy and the folks over there have to offer you. We love having her on the show, and it is freaky, feisty, flinty, and really fun Friday, so we couldn't ask for a better person to kind of arrive on the scene. Good morning to you, Jane.
Amen.
Good morning. Freaky Friday, eh? Is this what I have in store?
Yeah, Freaky Friday. By the way, you're following up a guy who owns a toy store in Lawrence, Kansas. He has a regular segment that's the same day as yours called Terry's Terrifying Terrific Toys of 1313 Mockingbird Toys. So, yeah, I mean, you're great company.
Step it up, Jane.
Every time I hear the end of a show and I go on to it, like this is like the third time I've been on his site and going, oh, yeah. I think I need to shop here. But,
Tom Bray.
Not for myself, but I have a lot of people in my life who there's a lot of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in there and Transformers and stuff like that I'm thinking, Christmas presents.
He, by the way, I mean, and I'll tell you what, they will work with you. They are, and I don't know if anybody knows this, and I really would encourage people to go back and listen to his segments as well, Jane, because what he has done over the years we've been doing this thing together is that he has slowly morphed it into not just a really wonderful kind of walk down nostalgia lane, creepy Von Creepstein lane. He's also a terrific small businessman. And he talks about how to kind of place orders. He talks about how to make the bottom line work. He understands that the people that he's talking to are small business owners in and of themselves or looking to make that move. So he has really geared that segment kind of beautifully to kind of address that. And part of what we're doing today is something kind of similar that you and I are going to talk about, where we're talking about some really fun stuff, but it really does have immediate and future implications for a lot of our friends out there who are listening as we speak. I mean, a lot of them are, in fact, need to know this stuff if they're going to make that leap into the future. And by the way, The Future Was Yesterday is very futurist. In regards to the thing that we've been talking about. Let's kind of start about the rabbit hole you went down, and then I'm going to tell you what is so interesting about futurism that I know a great deal about from simply doing academic research on it. But let's talk about futurologists and all that kind of groovy stuff. Go on.
So kind of just going back a bit to, I don't really know how this kind of happened, but the whole future, looking at the future and technology in the future kind of just came out of me really liking technology and, doing the online training stuff that we do. It kind of, and we started doing it kind of when the technology was right at the beginning. So I started seeing it develop, and we were always thinking about, okay, what's it going to be like next? What's it going to be like next? And this is kind of where futurism came from. So I started looking up. We were talking about the future of, the future of driver training and how people learn how to get their CDLs and how that's going to change. So I started by looking up the word futurist. And apparently this is a job. I did not realize that this was, not only was this a job, but also there's a job called futurologist. And there's differences, which I found really bizarre, that people are paying other people money to try and figure out what the future holds. And I think that's very interesting. And it actually has implications for drivers, but I thought the whole idea was interesting. And then I sent you a message and said, okay, here's what I want to talk about. And then you started telling me about all this other stuff.
Oh, I know. Yeah. You get my wife in the mix. I got to tell you guys, and we love it, by the way. We had Marshall and Jerry Bowers stop by when we had our big launch party over here. And if you get the right group of people together talking about the industry, it's amazing how you can end up literally in the ether. You can end up literally on the far side of the moon in regards to
Oh
conversation. We
yeah.
ended up totally in the weeds. I don't even know where to begin this conversation because we already were having one online. So I'm going to give you dealer's choice. You dealt this deck of cards. You figure out where we start.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Um, so the idea of, okay, so being a futurist is basically, I even have it's basically trying to predict the future. And trying to predict the future, if you're a futurist, you're kind of doing it more on the creative side of the spectrum where you're kind of getting a vibe and looking at like observational, and you're kind of thinking, okay, what are the trends and what's going to happen? And a futurologist is pretty much the same thing but does it with data. So companies who employ futurologists, because apparently it's a job you can go to school for, I find this very odd, but okay. Um, Apparently futurologists really are looking at data, and they look at numbers and things like that to try and tell them. I think it's very interesting because I actually met a futurist a few years ago. I think during COVID, and there's no mention of AI, like no mention of artificial intelligence. He was talking a lot about autonomous vehicles because everybody was talking about autonomous vehicles, and that does tie into AI a little bit. But AI just it was all cryptocurrency at that point, and then it all just jumped to AI. So I think that part of the problem with being a futurist is that you will not really see the thing coming that no one has thought of yet. But then I wanted to talk about, so that was kind of where I started. And what I wanted to actually talk about is, because I was looking at it, I'm having a terrible time with words today. I was looking at this whole idea of being a futurist because I was just about to write to you. Oh, I'm going to put on my futurist hat, and then I was thinking, okay, what is that actually? I want to make sure that I'm defining what this is, but what I want to do is talk about what I think is going to happen in the next 10 years in terms of driver training and how drivers are actually going to be affected by what's happening right now, and kind of look at what it's going to be like 10 years down the line. And I have about 8 different things that I kind of just off the top of my head kind of threw on paper, and that was what I really wanted to talk to you about, is what those things are and what you think about what I said about what I think. How about that?
How about that? Can I give an addendum before we get started? Just a really quick one because I really think that's terrific. I just want to kind of add a little bit of a prologue of my own because I really want to actually go through this with you really quickly. Give me a moment to breathe.
You may. If I said no, would Dre just hang up on me?
No. You could actually be no. Actually, to be honest with you, anybody that knows me and Dre knows me, you could actually say, "Let me get to this first, and then I want to hear what you have to say." I could always do that.
You go ahead.
Okay.
You go ahead.
Really quickly.
I want to hear it.
Really quickly. One of the reasons why this segment is called "The Future Was Yesterday" is not just because it's a great statement by Dave. It's a really clever saying, but the fact that it resonates with me because what a lot of people don't realize is, there's a couple of people that become kind of my guiding stars for predicting the future, and one of them is Raymond Lowery, who is the great engineer who was also the man who invented the logo for Coke and designed Air Force One. And my listeners have heard me say this before, that Lowery always said that if you wanted to create a product that was brand spanking new, what you had to do was you had to wrap it in nostalgia to give the incoming audience or purchaser a sense of comfort in order to kind of move into the future. If you wanted to introduce an old idea and make it afresh, you would then wrap it in the trappings of the future. And in many ways, we often find ourselves, the futurist project is about returning to the past and seeing what worked there and then front forward it into the future. So that the idea that, electric cars were here before petrol-driven automobiles. And that there's a lot of things that we use. I also would say the best futurists are often, and I make no complaint about it, are often people that work for Star Trek. After all, holodecks and and communicators are simply the future of video games and cell phones. All right, I've said that. Now dive in.
All right. So I don't know if you read them all, but I'm just going to start with number one. So here's what I think is that pre-CDL driver education. So if what you do to get your CDL, that itself is not going to change much in the next 10 years. After 10 years, I can't really tell you, but governments move so slowly and they struggle to catch up to reality so much that I don't think they're going to keep up with what's actually happening. And there's already issues with licensing and training in both Canada and the US right now. And they're arguing about just the basic what you have to do to get your license and how people are getting it. And I think that needs to smooth itself out. And once that happens, then I think the technology is going to start entering into it. But right now it's a mess.
I am in complete agreement. I will add one wrinkle into what you're saying because I've been saying this all along. I think that when those do change, when pre-CDL driver education does change, it will change because a number of people will show up in the industry with a series of skill sets that give them a very distinct advantage in the space. And I think a lot of carriers, a lot of companies, and a lot of people who are looking to gain an edge will start looking at those people and saying to themselves, we need to begin to figure out ways to onboard these people and to make this kind of the gold standard. So, for instance, looking into the future, the rise of trade schools, the rise of do-it-yourself education, and I don't mean like learning on YouTube, but the idea of taking certification programs, year-long programs, associate's degrees, all of that kind of stuff. I think a lot of people, as we make the move into light blue collar, that combination of white and blue collar, I think a lot of people are going to start learning multiple languages, learning how to do multiple things, becoming tinkerers again, that kind of Yankee workshop guy that, is famous from the 19th century, this kind of Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's court kind of figures are going to start showing up. And when they do, I think at that point, the carriers, the fleets, the transportation industry is going to be like, that's the guy, that's the gal we want to have working for us. So we've got to make sure the requirements actually recruit and attract that guy or that gal. So I agree with you.
Yes, and that actually is kind of linked to a couple of my other points. So the first one, and I'm not sure which one to do, is 2 or 5. I'm going to go to number 5. So in the near term, the focus of technology and AI and all of that stuff, I think is going to be in the back office. I don't think it's going to really affect how many drivers we need. It will affect the driver's role a little bit, but not the actual job, because I think what AI is going after right now are white-collar jobs. And those are the jobs that, I know that fleets have cut their staff on, if they have a brokerage, they've cut their staff there and they're using AI. That kind of, like, if you can use AI to do some basic documents or that kind of thing, then those are the jobs that are going. So I think white collar and Mark, my partner yesterday said, and the no collar, so all the artistic jobs are kind of being affected because AI is focused on replicating writing and replicating art online. That is, and I agree with you that it's going to be more important for people to be able to use their hands and use those skills. Those are going to be, being a truck driver, being a plumber, those blue collar skills are going to be very, very important in the future, because a lot of the white collar skills are going to be changed. I don't know how they're going to change, and I don't think white collar jobs are going away, but those are the ones that are changing.
Do you want to hear my bold synthesis of what you've just said? I agree with you, but there's a really interesting thing here, and I think it ties into one of your other points about as the technology gets smarter, so do the people who actually have to actually be a part of it and work with it. Here's the really cool thing. I don't think that the white-collar jobs are going away. I think they are actually blending into the blue-collar jobs. I think as more and more people begin to realize that those jobs behind desk are going to become obsolete. There's still going to be a need for a lot of that stuff. It's going to end up in the cab. And there's some really smart people right now who actually are commenting on our chat thing who would fit perfectly into this world. That what happens when, you basically start merging jobs. I don't mean getting rid of them, where you don't have any less truckers than you had before, but those truckers are actually running genuine offices. I mean, genuine offices out of the cab of those trucks, because some of the AI and some of the AV stuff allows them the time and the space to do a lot of clerical work while they're making their way down the road. That they will be interacting with AI inside the cab to do a lot of those jobs combined. And more people are going to find themselves on the road dealing with brokerage stuff, dealing with all that stuff, and then getting out of the thing to be able to do the mechanical work on the side of the road that needs to get done. I think what we're looking at here is the people who are going to survive in this economy are going to have a technological version of positive ADHD, where it's like you're working on both the mechanical side of things and working on the administrative and clerical side of things. I think it's going to demand more of workers, but give them more opportunities as well, too. That's kind of my take.
Absolutely. I think, and that, so point number two that I was going to talk about is kind of there, like, and you've alluded to that a couple of times. So my statement, because I do believe this, is that we are going to see incredibly stupid technology being developed by everyone. Like, just throw it at the wall, see if it sticks. Can we make money off of this? So what I think is going to be really key in the next little while is problem-solving skills. And you've talked about that, about how to, interacting with technology and how things are changing. Problem solving, if driving schools can teach problem solving as a skill, and I know that on Education Station you've talked a lot about that, about not just, here's the rote learning of how you do this and this and this, and you got to practice backing up, but also the problem solving that comes into it. So what happens when you have a breakdown and you don't know what's happened? What happens when you go to a customer site and then you don't know where the door, or you don't know where the gate is, you've gone to the wrong place, or all of the myriad problems that come into it. With technology, learning new technology is just another type of problem solving. It's like, okay, how do I wrestle with what this technology is and make it do my bidding? That's how I approach it all the time. It's like, okay, what do I want to do with it? Is this useful to me? And if it is useful, how am I going to use it? So don't make it, don't have the approach where the technology is doing something to me. It's how do I make this work for me? And if it's not working for me, how do I kind of move it to the side?
Well, and by the way, making stupid things in a workshop, making pointless technology in a workshop actually is the way we move forward. Don't ever forget that the ATM was a chocolate candy bar dispenser. Don't ever forget that.
Is it really?
It really is.
I did not know that, but now I'm never going to forget that.
Absolutely. And there are so many things that are stupid inventions that people think this is a pointless thing. Play-Doh, by the way, you should look up what Play-Doh was. And now everybody agrees that Play-Doh and what has, the idea of what that is morphed into, that let's think about this. Does Play-Doh, in fact, accelerate all those wonderful little hand devices that people use to kind of occupy their time while they're trying to get some work done? There's all kinds of stuff that gets invented that seems pointless, that just seems like it's just kind of wonderful, but it's pointless, like a Rube Goldberg device. Like, why do we have this? And then later on, the fact that somebody tinkered with it and put it together. That's what's so important. And, to make a movie reference here, there's a reason it's called Back to the Future, right? Is that, Marty goes back to go talk to a scientist to figure out a way to fix the future. The only way to fix the future is by returning to the past to find out what wisdom can be found there and what mistakes can be learned from to recorrect what we've done. And it's why the future was yesterday. That's where it's located. Go back and look at what happened yesterday and figure out a way if we can take what's best about that and bring it forward into our present time. And I think that's a great thing that people need to think about in regards to looking towards the past, not as a nostalgic blanket, but as a place where there are things to be plundered from and taken from so that we can move forward.
I think that, I like that approach where you're thinking about, okay, how did this show up and why is it like this, and why are people responding to it in a certain way? Like technology, there's definitely been a response. Like if I talk about social media, it has changed people. It has changed how people behave, and it has definitely increased the extremes and made the extremes much more accessible. But it's changed society. There's a lot more loneliness. Even though we have social media, it's more social, but yet more lonely. And people, there's a really good book that I'm reading right now, talking just about how it's changed our brains because it's so widespread. We see it every day. We're constantly there. And, where did that come from? How is that developing? And I'm not saying that that's necessarily, quote unquote, the stupid technology, but there are a lot of things that people throw at the wall. And what used to happen is you'd have an inventor like Doc Brown, like you bring up Back to the Future. Doc Brown would be sort of tinkering in his basement. He wouldn't be inflicting it on people. Now you get people just experimenting and then trying to sell it as a solution. And that's the dangerous part, I think, is that people have to really be careful when they buy technology because there's a lot of stuff that's just copycat and cheap, and there's some things that are really, meant to improve things, but then there's a lot of other stuff that's just noise. So right now we're in a really noisy part of life. This kind of age is really noisy. And once we get past that noise and sort of settle down a little bit, I think technology is going to be it's going to be like a phone. You don't remember a time before a phone. Now, again, not even a cell phone. I'm talking about the phones you hung on the wall. Like you can't even think of what that was like, but there was a time when people didn't have phones. So it's going to be, we're going to have AI incorporated into what we do, and people will not really remember what it was like before that.
Really quickly to kind of shift over back before moving forward again. Don't forget that the Pet Rock, Silly Putty, Coca-Cola, the Flowbee, the Smart Umbrella, Potato Chips, the Hula Chair, the Snuggie, Apple Newton, Furbies, Cornflakes, Bedazzlers, Pocket Fishermen, Post-it Notes, Roombas, Shake Weights, Slinkies, Thigh Masters, and Velcro were all pretty darn pointless when they first showed up on the scene. And this is something that people don't realize is the idea that one of the things that I think that we're going to have to continue to do as we move forward into the future, Jane, is to remind people that tinkering for the sake of tinkering, playing for the sake of playing, is everything doesn't have to have a point. The fact that you're doing it means it's got a point. And that you need to kind of let things play through. The idea that, everything has to have like this kind of destination that we head to is not necessarily the best way to think or the best way to get there a lot of the time. And that's going to play a big point. You know what we ought to do too, and we'll keep on moving through this stuff here, is the next time we meet about this, you and I ought to go on to and we've looked at a couple of things like popular mechanics, a lot of the newfangled technologies, and come up with 3 or 4 inventions that are coming up that we think are going to make a big difference in the transportation space. Because, man, there is some stuff that is coming up right now in regards to the uses of AI, but not just AI. I mean, part of it is going to be, Mark talked about the idea of what's going to happen to the no-collar jobs. My response to Mark would be, you know what AI can't replicate? IRL in real life. And I think that the artists, and I mean that across the board, that the creatives who understand that their new jobs is to go back to the future, to return back to the 19th century. And remember that Charles Dickens didn't make a lot of money off of writing his books. He made a lot of money off of reading his books to audiences in real life.
Ah, yes. Yes.
And I think that people should go back and look at the Grateful Dead, how far ahead of their time they were in regards to the dissemination of information and entertainment and a lot of things. Sorry, I'm getting into the weeds here. You got me very excited. What's your next question?
Well, I'm just looking for things that okay. So this is something that I see a little bit of, and I really hope that it was a bit experimental and it's going to go away. But I think that carriers are going to try and replace office staff with AI when communicating with drivers. I think they're going to think, oh, I could just use a chat bot instead of actually talking to a driver.
That
I've
ain't
talked
happening.
about this before.
That ain't happening.
You don't think it's happening?
I think it's happening. I don't think it's. I mean, when I say happening, I mean happening. You know, they might be trying it. They might be giving it a shot. Let me tell you something. I know a lot of these folks out there, and let me show you their reaction to chatbots. Ah! That's how they react to chatbots.
I think that's the universal reaction. I think that carriers who are doing it, I think that's their own reaction to a chatbot. If you go to try and get information and find out something, and you get, the first thing you see is a chatbot, and you have a complex question, that is the answer. Like, that is the response is, oh my God, why? And I'll tell you, that's not going to do anybody any good in best fleets. Like this whole, we have a chatbot who's going to be, checking in with our drivers once a week and blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, oh my God, please, no, don't do that.
I just think
please.
It's funny, this whole thing that we're on, this whole platform we're on, is the man at the center of it is named Dave. And every time I say the word Dave, I always think about Hal. I'm sorry, Dave. I love working with you, but I need to lock you out of the spaceship so you can die from oxygen deprivation. Sorry, Dave. I'm sorry, Trucker Bosun, but I simply can't let you back into the cab. I need to move down the road on my own now and drive this hazmat vehicle into a gas station. And it said into a gas station, so I mean literally into a gas station. Yeah, I mean, let's be honest here. If these people want humans to buy their goods, they might actually require humans to make their goods. I just have a feeling that's the thing that, unless you're going to give us all like guaranteed income and gazillionaires are going to share a little bit of the load, people are going to keep working. The other thing is too, Jane, people make pointless things, and so people are going to be figuring out ways to make things. People just like doing stuff.
Yep.
They just like doing stuff.
Well, yeah, people don't want to sit around and do nothing. I mean, people do not.
I don't know.
Well, okay, Ray, I know you do. But people who retire and have nothing to do tend to die quicker. I mean, they don't, like, people who don't have something useful to do, they don't feel like they're of use. They, that leads to depression. It can, like, not necessarily all the time. And when you say, I don't want to have anything to do, that means something you don't want to do. Like, you want to have some purpose. Like, people want that. But I just want to say one thing about the chatbots. We are going to have the chatbots, and then people are going to collectively scream, and then it will be awful, and people will stop doing it.
Chatbots. Let's put an end to chatbots. Jane Jazrawy and I have decided that the future was yesterday, so we're going to go back into the past and get some human beings to replace all these chatbots. Jane, that's it. We're done. Jane, of course, is the CEO of CarriersEdge. CarriersEdge is why you get to listen to The Future Was Yesterday and also Education Station. We've had some great episodes of Education Station. I can't wait to talk with you about summing up all those folks in short order. Thank you, Jane. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. You too.